This video is based on the Cambridge IGCSE Business Studies, Paper 1, and the question is based on the marketing concept of the product lifecycle. Paper 1, what it tends to have is snippets of information rather than a case study. So each question will be based on this information. So before we read the information, let's fully understand what the question is asking. So if we carry out the technique of IDF, which stands for instruction, direction, and focus, it'll help us to fully understand and interpret what the question is wanting. So the instruction, what we do there is look for the command words. So it's asking us to explain, and it's also asking us to recommend. If we look at the direction, it's directing us towards edge. So we have to make sure our answer is fully relates to the information above, and it's telling us about product Z. So again, to understand what product Z is, we need to read the information, and that will allow for the application of the answer. And when we look at focus, the focus is extension strategies. And you should have knowledge of your business theory in terms of marketing, and you should know that extension strategy relates to the product lifecycle. So now we've read the question and we understand what the question is asking, it's really important to read the information above and make sure that we address any clues that we could possibly use within our answer just to maximize those application marks. So the first one is to understand that product Z will be a mobile phone. So when we're looking at extension strategies and we're looking at the phone industry, some of the strategies that we may use for other products might not be realistic for a mobile phone, and the examiner will be, will be checking that as well. And if you give an example, such as buy one get one free for a mobile phone in terms of a promotional strategy, the examiner might deem that not to be realistic towards mobile phones. Also, the fact that it's price inelastic, that might rule out some strategies such as reducing price, because if they do reduce price, the quantity demanded might not be worthwhile in terms of the revenue it would generate, and therefore a company with a price inelastic product would most likely not reduce prices. So now we've considered the case study, let's just have a bit of a general understanding of the product lifecycle. So the product lifecycle, it relates to when the product is born into the market and the different stages it goes through until unfortunately it declines and has to be withdrawn from the market. So during the introduction stage, what you'll find is because it's a new product, the costs could be quite high to promote it. But the sales might be quite low because the lack of awareness. But as the product is out in the market and the marketing starts to work, then it starts to grow and sales and profits start to rise until it hits maturity. Maturity is when it's at its peak. Now, many products can remain in maturity for a very, very long time. If you think about certain chocolate bars, they've been in the market for years and years and years, and they've done very, very well to continuously extend the product. Some products have a very, very short life cycle. If you think about trends, think about fashions, their introduction will be sharp, the growth will be fast, but once they hit the maturity, it'll be quite short and it'll hit decline straight away. So some of the generic strategies for product lifecycle or extension strategies are the following. So pricing strategies could be used, but again, think about the case study. In this example, changing price probably wouldn't be the best one. Promotional strategies, again, if you're going to offer a promotional strategy, you need to be realistic as to which one would work for obviously the type of product it is. Bog off for mobile phones, buy one get one free, probably won't work. Okay, it's not realistic. But if you were to maybe offer a something like headphones free with the mobile phone as a promotional strategy, then that'd be more realistic. You could maybe change the product, restyle it, change the design. Think about Apple with the iPhone, they do that often. You could change the distribution networks. You can maybe even develop new market segments and base it and aim it at different market groups. You could try and find new ways or new uses for the product, or you could just reposition the product within the market. So let's go back and let's have a look at what we could do for product Z. So the first point I've made is they could introduce a new feature. And I thought, well, because it's a mobile phone and the examiner wants application, how could I relate it to the mobile phone industry? So I said it could be exclusive to Product Z, such as an app. Think about Apple and the iPhone. They often do extension strategies like this. They often include features which are just exclusive to Apple customers. You could even think about when they released the mobile phone with the U2 newest album, and every customer got it for free. That was a feature that was only exclusive to Apple customers. So once we've given the point, this is really important. We need to explain why this point would be a point at all, why this point would work, and then what it would lead to and what it would ultimately mean, relating back to what the question is asking. Now, many of my students, they forget about that reasoning. They don't always explain why that's a point in the first place. So my reasoning is, as this would be unique to product Z, customers could be more enticed to buy the product in order to have access to this brand new app. So then I need to think about what that would lead to, and again, what it would ultimately mean to completely finish this answer at this point. So my development would be, this would therefore encourage new customers to switch from competitors and buy the phone, and therefore increase sales for Edge, ultimately helping to extend the life cycle and reduce chances of decline. That last sentence just sums up the point and relates back to what the question is asking for. So that's one point, but the question is obviously asking for two strategies, so I have to think of a second strategy. Now, we need to make sure that we don't offer a very, very similar point, because again, from looking at some of the mock papers of my students, I've noticed that when a question asks for two points, sometimes students will give very, very similar points, and they're too similar, and the examiner is not going to award the marks. So the first point was Edge could bring out new features, and I gave the example of a new app, which was exclusive to the phone. My second one was new versions of the phone, maybe new colours, changing the design in some way. Again, I'm just thinking about Apple, and I'm thinking of some of the techniques they've used in the past, and Apple have brought out new phone colours, and it's worked. It's been successful, and the reason for that is because customers want this brand new style to make it different from every other customer. They want that unique element, and also because of the branding, they want the most recent or the newest versions of the phone, of the product. So again, once you've said your point, now you need to give reason as to why that would be a point at all. So I've put, this would attract loyal customers. So my first point was about new customers. My second point is about loyal customers who have already got other Edge products and therefore want to keep up to date with their most recent offerings. Now, given a reason as to why this would work, I have to develop it and say what it would lead to and ultimately mean. So my development, I've just said this would therefore attract repeat purchase, as it would remind their current customers about the phone, and therefore sales would increase once again, helping to extend the life cycle with greater revenue. Now I've done one point, which is bringing out new features. I've done another point, which is bringing out new versions. And as the question asks, I have to recommend which of the strategies I would choose and justify it. So this would be my conclusion. So when concluding, there's never really a right or wrong answer. You just have to really make sure that you argue it and you justify it, and avoid repeating what you said previously, because that's not justification. So I've signposted my conclusion to the examiner saying this is my conclusion. So in conclusion, I would recommend the new feature of an app. Now I need to justify it. So I've justified it by thinking about the cost and the risk of both strategies. I've put the reason for this is that it would be less costly than bringing out new versions. The cost of production of the new colours could be expensive for Edge, and if it doesn't work, then it could cause financial problems. However, the new features are less financially risky and could attract a new customer base. Developing a new app, you'd probably argue, is less risky and because you're only producing the one app, which can be then sent out to all phones, or the phones can just download the software. It's probably cheaper. Yes, there might be the cost of research and development, but the actual cost of producing lots and lots of new output with new colours, again, it could be costly.